Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Amit Harari, and coming up in today's newscast, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirming the annual Jerusalem Day March on coming Thursday. Meanwhile, Israeli Foreign Minister being the first official in 22 years visiting Sweden. And later, an endangered seal spotted on the Jaffa beach, attracting lots of attention. The annual Jerusalem Day Flag March will take place on Thursday as scheduled, and the route will include the Muslim quarter of the Old City. That's the word from Prime Minister's office, and ILTV's Steve Leibovich has the story.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed that the annual Jerusalem Day March will take place on Thursday, including its usual route through the Old City's Muslim quarter. Some 2,000 police officers will secure the event, which annually stirs Jewish-Arab tension. Several ministers, including right-wing ministers Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, are expected to attend. Jerusalem Day's Flag March is an expression of the Jewish people's celebration of the liberation and uniting of Jerusalem in the 1967 Six-Day War. There were some calls to change the march route to avoid tensions with Palestinians living in eastern Jerusalem. The timing this year is especially delicate in light of the fresh ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad terror group after 5 days of deadly conflict. In 2021, the Jerusalem March became a pretext for the Hamas terror group to launch an 11-day conflict dubbed by Israel as Operation Guardian of the Walls. The march is expected to be attended by thousands of Israelis, mostly from the national religious community.
And joining us right now on the upcoming event, and trust us, she's very busy, Deputy Mayor of Jerusalem, Fleur Hassan Nahum. Hi, Fleur. So the cross-border fighting with Islamic Jihad just ended. Is this the right time for a provocative march by thousands of flag-waving Israelis that includes the Muslim quarter of Jerusalem?
Well, I don't know when celebrating a wonderful reunification of a historic capital ever became a provocative march. We've been marching for years on this day. We're 56 years celebrating the reunification of the eternal capital of the Jewish people. When you take part in the march, you see that it's full of love for the city, full of love for the capital of the Jewish people, young people, old people, proud Israelis marching through the old city, which we paid in human life to reunify, which we paid when for years we couldn't worship freely in our holy sites. And so we are celebrating the return and the reunification to our historical capital. The fact that it has been politicized by the Palestinian Authority and call it a provocation does not mean that we have to see it as a provocation. We see it as a march of the love for the city of Jerusalem.
This definitely is a really nice message. Now, the police have been taken with so much extra duty in the recent period of mass protests and Ramadan violence. Are you confident that even with thousands of police on hand, this year's Jerusalem Flag March will not result in violence?
I know the police very well. I coordinate with them constantly. We have a wonderful police comprised of Jews, Muslims, Christians, and they're doing their best in order to keep the peace. It's not simple. And we also hope that everybody who is marching does it in a responsible way. The majority of the people marching are doing it in peaceful spirit, and we hope that is the general idea and the general feeling of this march.
And Israelis are all very proud of Jerusalem, the united eternal capital of Israel, but there are several large neighborhoods in the eastern part of the Israeli capital that are overwhelmingly Palestinian and don't even feel connected to the city. Might it not be wise to change the city's borders to better reflect Israeli and Jewish character of the city, perhaps?
Well, I think that if you actually asked the Arab residents of East Jerusalem, they would tell you that they would rather stay in the city of Jerusalem under Israeli sovereignty than be under the Palestinian Authority sovereignty, which doesn't give them anything, which doesn't support its people, does not encourage economic development. has no services. So most East Jerusalem residents, Arab East Jerusalem residents, are actually happy with the way that the borders are at the moment. We have some interesting numbers coming out tomorrow that will show that there is a huge improvement in employment in East Jerusalem. We also have figures to show that more and more Arab members of East Jerusalem, Arab community of East Jerusalem, are taking the Israeli bagruyot, the Israeli matriculation, as opposed to the Palestinian matriculation, which already shows a very positive trend in the fact that most Palestinian or Arab residents of East Jerusalem are very happy to move towards integration and not separation.
Staying with the residents, over the past years, the Jewish population of Jerusalem has been changing pretty dramatically from a majority secular Jews to a majority of ultra-Orthodox. Is that the future of Jerusalem, that more secular Israelis no longer planning to stay there?
No, the numbers that we actually have show that the level of secular people in the city is stable. And from the Jewish population that we have, the secular and the traditional and the modern Orthodox still outnumber the ultra-Orthodox. So those are the real numbers. It may feel to certain people that there's more ultra-Orthodox in the city, and the numbers are growing because their birth rate is higher than anybody else. But ultimately, this is still the most diverse city and most multicultural city in the country. We also have numbers to show that we are the biggest absorber of immigrants of all the cities in the country. And so the diversity of the city of Jerusalem, which is very much part of its DNA, is alive and well.
And it's also one of the most beautiful cities, we must say. Now, for any message you have for the people planning to come to the march tomorrow, to the march on Thursday?
Well, we welcome everybody that want to celebrate the beauty of our historical and eternal capital. Everybody should remember that this is our capital for 3,000 years. And so when we celebrate, we do so with love, with song, with happiness. We are not doing a march against anybody. We are doing a march for Jerusalem.
Flora, much luck to you on Thursday and the preparations, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
In a United Nations speech marking Nakba Day, PA President Mahmoud Abbas took liberties with history by blaming the United States and the United Kingdom for creating Israel and displacing the Palestinians. ILTV Steve Leibovich reports.
While calling for a two-state solution based on pre-1967 borders, Abbas said the Nakba, or catastrophe as the Palestinians refer to Israel's creation, is the direct responsibility of the U.S. and UK. They decided to establish and plant another entity, the Jewish people, in our historic homeland, said Abbas. Speaking at a special session of the UN Committee on the Exercise of the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinian People, Abbas said that he remains open to holding talks with Israel to reach an agreement while insisting that the Palestinians have rights to all of Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, and for the return of refugees to their pre-state homes in Israel. Abbas neglected to say that Israel accepted the UN partition resolution in 1947, while it was rejected by Arab states, who then launched the war against the new Jewish state in the War of Independence in 1948. Abbas also did not point out that since the start of the Oslo process in 1990, Israel has repeatedly demonstrated a willingness to take part in talks to reach a compromise based on a negotiated solution. In his closing, the Palestinian leader, who has made controversial statements related to the Holocaust and the Nazis in the past, compared Israel's policies to those of Joseph Goebbels, who served as the Nazi regime's propaganda minister. A dozen countries canceled participation in the UN Nakba Day event following a concerted effort by Israeli diplomats led by Foreign Minister Eli Cohen. Those staying away included the United States, Canada, Britain, Ukraine, and 8 other countries.